Welcome back to another episode of Reborn with me. Today we are working on the complexion layers for our Reborn Asher Awake Lifelike baby doll. So there's not a whole lot to explain here. We are doing the first complexion layer and quite possibly the last complexion layer. I'm getting myself a good bath of Flesh 08 ready to go. I'm using odorless paint thinner to create a watercolor consistency. So I want to be able to see through the paint. But it doesn't have to be as transparent as our mottling layers. So the basic idea is we've gone through, we've done all of our mottling, we've painted our veins, and we've done, oh my heavens, I'm bumping into the camera, sorry. And we are, I'm going to say that again. So at this point, we've done our mottling, we painted our veins, we've done the blue shading. So the purpose of all of those steps was to create the appearance of blood flowing under the skin. Now that our under the skin is complete, we're ready to add some skin. Now there's not a whole lot to explain on the complexion layer because if you were with me for the base coat video, this is essentially the same thing all over again. So we're using the same color, we're using it at roughly the same consistency, and we're just going to add on a nice even coat of paint. So let's go ahead and I'm going to use this to apply my paint. So we're going to keep mixing it up so that we have that translucent, consistent color. I'm going to apply some to the sponge, and with my brush, I'm going to go get these creases, the places that the sponge essentially can't reach. So just adding the creases, and I have to say I've hardly done anything and I'm liking this a lot already. Yay, I'm getting excited. Okay, and as we mentioned, this doll has a lot of creases, so we're just gonna dab into those, get all these hard to reach places. You know, the paint's kind of dripping, I'm kind of getting too much, but it really doesn't matter at this point because we're going to go over it twice with two different sponges, and that's really going to take away that excess paint and give us a nice even layer. Alrighty, I'm going to go with the porous sponge or the cheaper sponge. Ooh, that looks so nice. I hope you can see what I'm saying. When you finish the mottling layers, the skin looks really raw. So as soon as you put that first complexion layer on, it's just like, ooh, it's starting to look like skin. It's starting to look less gross now. Lifelike without grossness. Okay. I'm just gonna spin it around a few times to make sure I got it all. Don't want to leave any blank spots. Okay, this is looking like a good coating to me. FYI, I do have a paintbrush, a not great paintbrush, inserted into the leg that's helping me to support it as I'm painting. Okay, and as we always do, I've got my less porous sponge, or my more expensive, good, high quality sponge that are apparently in high demand because they're suddenly very difficult to find at CVS. And I'm just going to very gently even out that layer. And what is also creating is what we like to call this sort of a pinprick texture. You can see how the light's reflecting that there. It's very nice. And it looks really good for baby skin. Of course, once the paint is all done, we'll go back and do another layer of skin texturing, and that's going to be even cooler. Don't forget to blot your sponge as you go. It's going to absorb a lot of paint and a lot of liquid. And the point of this brush sponge is to keep it on the dry side because we're trying to remove all but a very thin layer of paint. I'm so excited. This looks so great. Yay! Right. So I think I've gotten everything my sponge can handle. If you may recall from the base coat video, I've got this nice long bristle mop brush that is just the right length and just the right shape for buffing the paint out of these creases. So I'm going to take a closer look here. You can see how shiny it is in the crease because a lot of paint's accumulated in there. The brush takes it right off, and that's going to be really good for us because we don't want any extra paint clogging up the works here. So I'm going to go over every single crease on this limb to get all that shininess out of it. And once it's dried, of course, we're going to give it a good look over again to make sure I didn't miss a spot. Flesh 08, when it's dry, will turn into a light chalky kind of color. So if you've got too much of it, you're going to see that whiteness or that chalkiness on your piece. And that's all right, because if we haven't cured it yet, it's just a matter of taking your Q-tip and blotting that stuff back out. So it is all gravy. Wiping out these creases. The deeper the crease, the more you'll have to work the paint out of it. And this kit has some pretty deep creases. Okay. Alright, so that's my first complexion layer. I'm going to paint the rest of the limbs. Allow this to dry and I'll come back and show you how it looks. The base coating video or you're painting along with me, I wanted to show you again my little trick for painting the head. So the challenge with painting the head is that it's a very large area and the paint has a tendency to dry before you finish blotting it all. So what I like to do is to take my mop brush and get all of the hard to reach spaces on the face. So I get up in the eye sockets, I get, inside the nose and around the nose, the lips, under the neck here. I get the ears on both sides. Make sure I get in and around the ears. Okay, all those things that the sponge isn't going to be able to hit. Get the neck a little more actually. And then I'm going to take the sponge and pick up the rest of the face. And I'm going to go only to the hairline. I'm going to go around the ears. I'm going to make sure I get the cheeks, the neck, okay, all the way around both ears, and even around the back of the neck. The idea is that everything that won't be covered in hair, we want to get that all in one swoop, because we need it to match and we don't want anything to dry before we can get to it. I'm going to take my good sponge and wring it out on a napkin. And then, as if I'm applying moisturizer or makeup, I'm going to start right in the center of the face and work my way out. And this creates a nice, even skin tone for your doll. All the way to the ears, across the temple. And I don't know if you can see it, but the blue shading's looking very nice underneath this complexion layer. It actually brings it out. I was worried we were going to bury it, but it's actually even more noticeable with the paint on it, so that's great. Okay, so I'm just going out, getting this nice, even tone wherever I can get it, wherever the sponge will reach. Around the back too. Okay, until we're satisfied with how it looks. So this looks like a nice even coat to me. So now I've got a little time back, I can get my brush and start blotting that stuff out of the creases. So we've got these nice long bristles on the mop, which does a really excellent job of pulling the paint out of the creases. You can take your time with this step. You really want to make sure you get it all. And the motion that I'm doing, so the bristles are absorbing the paint for me, but I'm also just very gently dragging the paint out of the crease into a place where I can get to it with my sponge. And get it out of the nose too. As I mentioned with the base coat, if you're having trouble getting in the ears, just feel free to get a smaller brush. I like to buy the cheap multi-packs from Michael's because you never know when there's just something good in there that's useful for reborning. So this is actually a nice mop brush that I got off of the internet, but it's small enough for what I'm trying to do. Okay, same deal, working from the center. I'm going to blend it forward so that there's a seamless connection to the area I painted earlier. It still helps to work fast. The faster you paint, or the faster you blot, the more even a tone you'll get, because the paint becomes less movable as it dries. So if you're working really slowly and things are drying on you, then those will create patches of paint accumulation that distract from the seamless finish that we want. Not the end of the world, of course, but you just want to do a good job. And you can see the face has already started to dry quite a bit. Just gonna pounce over it one more time to make sure everything's good and even. And this is with my drying sponge. And I want to find a smaller brush that's gonna let me dig some paint out of the ears. So I think I used this guy last time. Can you imagine somebody doing this to your ear? I bet it would be very ticklish. So that's good. And of course, once the paint's dry, it will tell you if you have too much anywhere. So that'll be our second chance to even it out before it goes in the oven. Alright, so the limb we started with has had time to dry, is looking really great. So before we put it in the oven, we want to do a visual inspection to make sure that we don't have paint accumulating in any of the creases. The mop brush that I used did a really good job, so for these big creases, it's looking great. If we zoom in a little on these toes, you can see there's a little bit of extra paint between these two toes. So that is no problem, it's easy to clean out. All I need to do is take the pointy Q-tip, another one of my CVS favorites, and gently scrape that paint out of there. Now if your crease is too deep and the Q-tip just isn't getting in there, you can also use a toothpick to gently scrape it out. Okay, so once we've seen all of our creases and we're happy with how it looks, we're going to stick this in the oven. In the New Wave oven, we're going to do 8 or 9 minutes at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. That is power setting 6 or 60% power. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for Reborn with me.